All right, I'm Chip Griffin, NVARC, extra class amateur operator. Been doing this since 1992. I'm kind of active with POTA, do a lot of FT8 for a lot of reasons we can discuss if people are interested. I was the president of Racon, which is one of the clubs that we're going to talk about in this presentation, for a handful of years in the early 2000s. Married to my wife Liz, who's also a ham and one MLG, and my older son, I have two sons, my older one is also licensed, it's KB1HNQ. It's kind of a family affair. I have a grandfather who's a silent key who was a ham, an aunt and uncle who are recent silent keys that were hams, and a couple of cousins. So been a lot of us in the hobby over the years. So the goal of this presentation is to kind of relate our club story.
Excuse me for a second. This might help you if you want to use this.
Have people having trouble hearing me?
I don't know.
Well, if you guys kind of quiet down in the back, it'll help, I think. All right, I can talk louder. So the object of this is to kind of relate the story of what we did in our clubs. Not so much for you to emulate, but to take some lessons learned from it as sort of a case study. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of history, and then I'll go into what we did and why we did it. So there are several clubs involved, three that I'll talk about initially, but really two that are the basis. So Racon is the one I'm most familiar with. At one time I was a member of all three of the clubs that I'm about ready to mention, but I was a member of Racon continuously from 1992 through this entire period that I'm talking about. It was formed sometime in the 1970s, I believe. It operated a couple of repeaters. Those repeaters are still in operation, one on 2 meters, one on 70 centimeters. They had an auction, which is a little different. You don't see too many of those. I mean, everybody does a flea market or a ham fest, but we did an auction every year in the spring and had done that for quite a few years. We always did a field day. Generally, it was fairly well attended. And when I was first licensed in 1992, it was very common to see 30 people or more at a club meeting. Near the end of this story, we were down to 8 to 10 at a meeting. The next club that I want to talk about was Tri-City Amateur Radio Club. I don't know as much of the history, but again, it was a long-standing club that also served. This is in Southeastern Connecticut, New London County, Connecticut, predominantly, although we did service a little bit into Rhode Island, Westerly particularly. In fact, I think that's where the name Tri-City came from, was Norwich, New London, and Westerly, as I understand it. I'm getting Bob W1RPQ, who talked a little bit during the last presentation, is a member of our club. Right. They also had an auction annually, typically in the fall. That was a coordinated thing, one in the spring, one in the fall, but there were the two different clubs. Also typically ran a field day. I would consider Tri-City a little bit more of a social club. They didn't run any repeaters. They supported the hams more from that perspective, did activities, met at their meetings. And then a third club that I'll mention really is not directly involved in this story is Scrams, and I mostly mention them just so that you understand that there was, just in New London County, at least 3 clubs that were operating for a long period of time that were kind of distinct, a little bit of overlap, but distinct. Scrams is primarily a repeater club. They operated repeaters. I don't know that they were active with field day or other activities like that. As I mentioned, all 3 served Southeastern Connecticut and a little bit into Rhode Island. There was an annual tradition that the three clubs would get together around the holidays, around Christmas time, and have a party together. And they would take turns between the club who would sort of organize and host it. That was a long-standing tradition. There was a little bit of overlap in membership, but not a lot. Like I said, when I first got my license, I joined all three, but Tri-City and Scrams, I eventually let my membership lapse. But I stayed with Race-On. So I'm going to focus on talking about Race-On and Tri-City and the process that they went through. So the situation developed through, particularly in the 2000s, both clubs were kind of starting to struggle. Low membership numbers, common stories that we're hearing, low membership numbers, difficulty getting members to participate in activities or lead activities or even take officer positions. So at one point, Race-On even got to the point where they had to modify their quorum so they could continue having meetings, because we were starting to regularly not meet that. So we lowered the quorum down just so we could continue to have meetings. So that kind of sets the stage. So the proposal that was made was, or the idea that was formulated was, what if the clubs merged? And so that idea was batted around. It was kind of talked in private. And eventually, it was proposed more formally at the club meetings, and we decided to pursue it. So both clubs agreed to an investigation. A committee was formed. I was one of the members of the committee. We had members from both of the clubs, both Tri-City and Race-On, get together and start working on it. And kind of our first step was to look at Constitution and bylaws, because that's kind of the core of a new club. And so we built that. And one of the things that we learned right off the bat is some things that I think some people will take for granted. So a Constitution focuses formally or fundamentally on the organization and the structure of it, whereas bylaws should focus more on process of an organization. And they're actually two distinct things. And I think in clubs those are often blurred. So because we were starting from scratch, we had gone back to Robert's Rules and educated ourselves a little bit on that. We made a very distinct effort. There's actually the process of changing the Constitution is different than changing the bylaws in the new form that we came up with, and that was because of that. We met for about 7 months as a committee, developing the Constitution and the bylaws, as well as a process by which the clubs, if they came to agree and accept this, there had to be some process. How do you go from having two clubs to suddenly only having the one club? And that brought up another thing that we learned in this process. Again, looking at Robert's Rules, we discovered that there's actually two very distinct ways of taking two entities and forming one entity. And one of those is merging, but it's not what you think. And the other is consolidation. So merging is where you have two entities and one remains and the other becomes absorbed. That's merging, which is not what we did. And in most cases, it sounds like from the prior presentation Ken was talking about, that's probably not what Podunk and the other club did. It sounds more like they consolidated, which is when you have two entities and in the end you have one with a new name and neither of the two formers continues to exist as an entity. So I'm going to continue to call it merging because that's how people mostly think about it, but technically what we did was a consolidation. So in the process, we reviewed both sets of bylaws. We did research with Robert's Rules. There was a lot of discussion and debate about different elements. Some things were more contentious than others. Again, lots of back and forth. And when towards the end, when we finally had what we thought was a good product, we brought them to the two clubs to review and vote on. And the The eventual process that we came to was each club would review the final product once we'd gone through some revisions, the final product, and then we had a combined meeting where we would do the final, yes, we're going to do this. We formally dissolved. There were motions and votes and all of that to actually do the final consolidation. So like I said, that took 7 months. It was very heavily involved from both clubs. I think we had 8 to 10 members on the committee that were very active in contributing. A couple of us kind of took a lead in doing most of the editing of the document, but there was lots of input. We used Zoom for face-to-face meetings, and this happened around 21, so it wasn't in the COVID area, but it was very convenient to meet on Zoom. We didn't have to all come together in a specific location. So we did a lot on Zoom. We had formed a groups.io email group so that we could communicate offline. We could do follow-ups if there was an action item or a question that we could prepare for before we got together. We had a Dropbox where we could maintain documents, particularly like old bylaws and constitutions, other things that we might want to review. And we also had a Google Docs so we could do live editing, and multiple people could be working on the bylaws and the Constitution at the same time. And that made it pretty easy and pretty dynamic. Quite often we'd be in a meeting, and as we were discussing things, we could bring it up on the screen and share, make live edits as we were discussing, precise wording and things like that. So it worked very well. The result is a totally new club, which is the one that's mentioned on here, C-Course, which is Southeastern Connecticut Amateur Radio Society. And that's a little bit of a nod. So if you think about it, RASON, Radio Amateur Society of Norwich, because normally it'd be like maybe Amateur Radio Society of Norwich, but if you spell that out, that's arson. Might be a bad look for ham radio. So that's kind of where the Amateur Radio Society particular format came from. But anyway, so CCARS, we immediately sort of kind of effectively doubled our membership. It also generated a lot of excitement and interest just because this was kind of a new novel thing going on, and that helped draw in some people that hadn't been active, that heard what was going on through the grapevine and started getting more active. We had been holding some VE sessions, but again, VE sessions were a good contributor, and like many other clubs, we had a strong relationship with the Meriden Amateur Radio Club, and so we were getting good ideas from them. So we did things like offering a free one-year membership to people that attended our VE sessions. We still do the auction. We've now I think we do a flea market one time and an auction the other time, so it's not 2 auctions a year. Now it's an auction, a flea market. I kind of like the idea of the auctions because it's kind of novel. There's not a lot of those in the ham community, but flea markets are honestly a lot easier to do, a lot less effort for the club, and there's a reason why they're popular. We now have a much larger field day. Again, we immediately doubled, but as I'll get to in a second, our membership has continued to grow quite a bit beyond that. So we have a very large field day. Bob has run a couple of them and probably could give us specific numbers, but it's very large and very active. And fortunately, we found a very nice place to host us that gives us lots of room and has some very nice facilities. We managed to apply for and get some grants for some money, so we rebuilt our repeaters pretty much from the ground up, and also refurbished the building that they were in because we had serious mouse infestation and mold issues. So those were, we got some grant money to renovate those. Also did a funding drive to help that. Overall, the club is much healthier and more vibrant now. I think I looked, our website now says we're at over 110 members. It's probably even a little higher than that. I don't have the exact number, but that's pretty good from, having maybe 20 members on the rolls to of 2 separate clubs that were kind of in a sense, competing with each other without that being a bad thing, but still, now we have one larger, very active. That doesn't mean things are perfect. Things aren't perfect. We still occasionally have trouble getting somebody to volunteer to lead something. An annual tradition that we have had, we had in Rayson for years, was in the fall, one of our meetings we would turn into a picnic. We'd still hold a little bit of a business meeting, but it was primarily just a picnic. And I understand this year we had a little trouble getting somebody to head that up. We're still going to have the picnics this year, but it's going to be a little less formal. So things aren't perfect, but they're a lot better, a lot more active. I know one of our recent presidents, who was the president through this transition, is here today. He's doing 2 other presentations. He's got one going on this exact same time, one of the other rooms. So, and that's what I had in here. Are there any questions? Ken?
How did you reconcile, when you consolidated the 2 clubs, the board members of the 2 clubs, how did you reconcile who would ultimately be on the board for the new consolidated club?
So the structure was going to be different between the old clubs and the new clubs. So there was a new structure, and they still had a president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, but the number of directors was a little bit different. I don't think we had directors in Rayson. I'm not sure about Tri-City, but we did define those things. And so once we agreed to it, then part of that consolidated meeting to actually form and become the new club was then to hold elections for those positions. And I know, for example, the president of Rayson at the time became the first president of C-Cars. Just how it worked out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions? Vern?
I think you said you had about 100 members. Of the 100 members, how many typically attend meetings?
So typically there's probably 20 to 30 in the room, 20 to 25 in the room, and maybe another half dozen to a dozen on Zoom. We do a hybrid meeting these days that also is another improvement. By having a Zoom option, it allows people who may not be able to get to the site due to work hours or whatever to still attend the meeting.
Chip, you mentioned getting some grants. What was the source of the grants? A little curious.
I don't remember exactly. I think the ARRL was one of them. I'm not sure about the other. Oh, it was only one. Okay.
The second one was just we looked for donations for the shack.
For the shack. Okay.
Yep.
Do you remember where it came from, Bob?
What's that?
Do you remember where it came from? The grant?
ARRL one?
It was from the ARRL?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
501c3?
Yes, we also did become I know Rayson was not. We had tried over the years, had talked about it, but we'd never kind of finished the process. C-Cars is. That was one of the things we did in the first year or 2 after formation, was to go through the process, which actually required some additional changes to our constitution and bylaw that are required to be a 501(c)(3). So.
One thing a club had that's big in Westchester, WECA, which has a few hundred members, one of the bigger repeaters, the voting sites, has a lending closet they used to have with equipment that you could give people who are new to use. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're not doing with ours, but these make thoughts of something that's occurred. We've had a lot of clubs in my time come and go. Before repeaters, we had HF mostly, we talk on VHF, and some have come and gone. Even repeater, 9-1, that's on Mount Greylock, there was one in Yonkers. They started in the 70s, they're gone.
Yep. We did, Rayson before the consolidation did not have a loan equipment. Tri-City did have some. In the consolidation, that was part of the process that we had to work through. The bank rolls and the equipments were combined. So C-Cars does have a lending library, or does have equipment. I think there's a couple radios and some antennas. There's some gear there that's available for club members to check out.
So Chip, one of the issues I hear about clubs merging is that you have conflicts when it comes to things like egos, okay, or club members who really are against, belonging to something new. They want to stick with what they're used to, kind of thing. Did you have any of those kinds of issues come up, and how did you go about rectifying them?
I don't recall there being any specific hard points with that. I know we did think about that. And one of the reasons why we did go for the consolidation, which is the two clubs that go into one versus one club that absorbs the other, was we wanted to be able to have both of those histories still feel like they were intact. So by both of those kind of combining into one and then becoming a whole new something else, felt more like keeping that history alive. And so we didn't get a lot of pushback from the membership. We did talk about that in the committee quite a bit, particularly early on. But I don't remember it being like a heated thing. It was just acknowledging we did want to recognize the history. But again, like some of the other folks mentioned, a lot of our current members that help bolster our numbers are new folks coming into the hobby. Bob?
Yeah, at the time of consolidation, most of us were members of both clubs. I was president of one, and I was vice president of the other one. And it was so bad in the years leading up to that. I mean, I showed up as a technician, and my second meeting was elections, and I walked out as vice president because nobody else was interested, which was when we started thinking about, hey, what do we do to fix this? And we started chatting about, well, could we do this? And there's a little animosities. There's always going to be. We're Connecticut Yankees. You know?
Right.
You live in a different town, so obviously ours is better. But we didn't have any bigger issues. We were really trying to find out how can we make a single club that's going to work.
Yeah.
And it's been great.
And I think part of the thing that made this quite possible was there had never been like major rifts between the two clubs. Like I said, we all three clubs that originated were in the county would get together at least once a year for the Christmas party or the holiday party. And field day was not uncommon over the years. Didn't happen every year, but some years I know Tri-City and Rayson did a combined field day a few times. You know, so there was still a relatively healthy relationship, and that helped set the groundwork. So this, like I said, this won't work for every club situation. If that had been a major thing for us, I'm not sure we would have gotten through it.
So adjacent to the people maybe, but when you went through the documents and the procedures and everything, was there anything that was challenging to set into the new structure, or anything from the old docs that caused a problem for recons? I guess you basically ended the other things, so you had to go through anything they had for dissolving that or something. But was there anything that caused a problem about the way the existing organizations, were set up? No,
I mean, like I said, we did go through both, and they were very similar. There were some differences. I believe Tri-City had term limits. Rayson didn't. The new club has term limits in it. Honestly, I wasn't a fan of that, but we had discussions, and again, the discussions were very friendly, and we would come to an agreement and majority rules, and then present it to the club, and then you have discussions, and again, majority rules, and there was nothing that was hard sticking point that prevented us from going forward. So.
You said for 501c3 there was some stuff you had to tweak. Is there anything worth talking about there in terms of if you were setting something up, or?
I'd have to go back and look at my notes because again, that was a sort of a separate process.
Yeah.
We did the consolidation or the merger, and then it was after that was done, we started looking into it, and as we dove deeper into it, we realized there were some things that the 501c3 was going to require that we didn't exactly have nailed right in our, so we had to make, they were relatively subtle things though, but I could go back, but maybe Bob will remember, but.
I would say if you have questions about 501c3 and changing your club to that, the person to talk to is Mark, K-E-1-I-U. Yeah. He is part of the Marconi project, and he is the guy that's going around and spoken to other clubs, and he's got a great presentation on how to do that.
Just a comment, Mark presented on 501c3s here last year, and that's on videotape. So if you go to YouTube, you can find that. And when I send out the follow-up emails after this, I'll include a link to last year's presentation. Thank you.
Yep.
You put together 3 different clubs, essentially, or 2 different clubs, ultimately, that were waning in attendance. What were the considerations of numbers of people? Is there a certain number you'd say they really shouldn't be a club? Or are there too many people when you consolidate if it grows? Is there a chance that you'll have to divide into multiple clubs? And is it more numbers or is it more geography that determines that?
I would have to say it would depend on the situation. I don't know that there's a universal rule on that. I think when numbers get too low, you reach a point where, I mean, like I said, it's common. Most constitutions or bylaws will have some sort of a quorum. You have to have a minimum number to keep going, and honestly, you got to have active members. I mean, as Bob was alluding, we were having trouble getting people to agree to have leadership positions, and when you start getting numbers that low, then you got a question about future existence. I wouldn't say too much. I suppose if your club is starting to develop rifts, I mean, that could happen in a very large organization. If you're starting to get rifts, that might be a time that you consider splitting into. Or maybe there's just a way that you find a way to reimagine your organization to address the fact that there's people who have different interests or different whatever. But one of the things that I love about ham radio is there's so many different facets, whether you like HF or VHF, you chase paper, or you like nets, or you just like to rag chew, or you like to build things. I mean, all of these things and so much more. There's always something else. I still haven't done satellite yet, you know? That's something down the road. So having differences is a good thing, I think, in our hobby. I'm getting the time limit.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.